Don't test that stereo.
This is the Iron Sharpens Iron Show with your host, Latrice Cook.
Good afternoon, KAZI listeners. You are tuned into the Iron Sharpens Iron Show, and I am your host, Latrice Cook, on this glorious Wednesday afternoon, going to put some flavor in your ear. You know, the Iron Sharpens Iron Show talks about people, places, resources, and things that affect those that have previously been incarcerated in their families. This is a show that has just continued to provide important and impactful information to not only this population, but for the people who are who don't have experience in this realm of life. So we appreciate you all listening. Happy birthday to my oldest son, Aaron. Wow, just a wonderful young man who has been one of my biggest cheerleaders and was the first love of my life. And so celebrating this day with him and wishing all the best to him from here and henceforth. I want to tell you that, as usual, we always have guests who are going to give you some information that is pertinent and that is important to you, the listening audience. And today is no different. I am a little bit still jet lagged. Just had a business event in Canada. Just came back from Vancouver, Canada, and my executive assistant, who is always keeping me timely and moving and everything, went on that trip, and we can say that we had a wonderful time, and we are still recovering from a 7+ bike ride that we didn't know we were going to have trying to enjoy Vancouver and the parks there. So again, just happy to be back on Texas soil and in the studio with such outstanding people. And here at KAZI, where we have given you 40 years of information, music, and selfless volunteerism to you all, our community, our listening audience, the Austin and surrounding areas. Please support the radio station. You can contact us this morning, 512-836-2887. I'm sorry, this afternoon, 512-836-2887. If you care to join in this conversation. And even if you just have something you want to say, feel free to give us a call this afternoon. We're happy to listen and hear from you, our listening audience. Also, shout out to the Melch Center, which is the organization I founded 19 years ago. We work specifically with people who have previously been incarcerated and their families. Shout out to our staff there that is waiting by the phones. If you have any questions or needs, 512-473-2525, 512-473-2525. Are you enjoying this fall weather? I mean, I want to believe that I bought this all the way back from Canada, and just like, you know, I want to believe that it's because of me that we're having this wonderful weather. But we know that it's not that. We just want to say we're enjoying having this cool weather right now. It's so important to be able to have weather like this, and it gives us a different sense, a different feel. It makes me happy to wake up to cool and not hot every day. Today, we have in our studio people from the Austin Independent School District, and we're going to be talking about a myriad of things. Basically, some of the things that are right now very important to us as we come in, as we are in the election season. Remember, early voting begins on October 22nd, I believe, and the actual election is on November 7th. So if you are registered to vote, please exercise your right to vote and begin and vote early. October 22nd, I believe, is the early voting date. Please verify that for me, somebody. The 24th, I'm sorry. Early voting begins October 24th through November 4th. And then election day, of course, as you know, is November 8th. So please, if you're registered to vote, exercise your right to vote. Gloria is a part of the community engagement team in Austin ISD, where the Board of Trustees has voted unanimously to put a bond on the November ballot for voters to decide on. The 2022 Austin ISD bond is a $2.44 billion bond that creates opportunities for the district to make changes throughout Austin to help create the 7 conditions for student success. This bond package was created to prioritize historically underserved communities. Gloria works in education because of empty chairs, classroom, hungry kids, and vulnerable communities. As a former parent support specialist at Brook Elementary, Gloria has lived experience that was missing in previous years in areas like community engagement. Knowing and experiencing the things that some of our students are experiencing has helped Gloria to become more intentional in her work. Sometimes there is an empty chair in a classroom simply because a child does not have clean clothes. Sometimes classrooms sit empty because the students were not prioritized over the facilities. Sometimes the students' only meals are those they access in schools, and historically vulnerable communities exist because they were designed to be so. Good morning, Gloria Vera Bedolla.
Good morning.
And also in the studio, I would like for you to introduce, because I don't have her information, I would like for you to introduce your other colleague that is with you.
Sure. Allie, I think, can speak for herself. Sorry, you need me to scoot up? But we work in community engagement, and Allie has been there way longer, and she can speak more in depth about this.
Good morning, Allie, or good afternoon. I keep saying morning because I'm so used to being on the Good afternoon, Allie. Please, who are you and what do you do?
Good afternoon. I'm so happy to be here. I'm Allie Ghilarducci. I'm the Assistant Director of Community Engagement with Austin ISD. I've been with Austin ISD for 5 years. Before that, I was an education organizer and I worked in, what was at the time Reagan, but now Northeast, Vertical Team, East Side, and Navarro.
Nice. Are you an Austinite?
I have only been in Austin for about 8 years, so no, I'm one of those folks who came from California.
She won't say that out loud.
But I'll say I left California kicking and screaming, and then I got here, and I was like, all right, I'm not going anywhere.
Well, good afternoon. I'm glad to have you ladies here. A lot of times our focus point, of course, is criminal justice and people who have been affected by the system, also resources involving those persons who might have a resource available to the population that we discussed. I think this is interesting, Allie, because the one thing that we know is that there has been a huge conversation about the school to prison pipeline, and before we delve into the bond, I think that it would be easy for you all to discuss how this bond is important as it refers to maybe eliminating or loosening the noose on the prison school to prison pipeline.
Yeah, I would love to address that. So as you mentioned in your intro with Gloria, we like to reference the 7 conditions for student success. Most of those have to do with having a culturally proficient teacher who sees the inherent gifts and talents in every student, having curriculum that is reflective of our students' backgrounds, things like that. But the very last but not least important is having well-maintained facilities that reflects children's cultural identities. And with this bond, and we can definitely dive into more kind of how this bond was built, because it was truly, truly unique, coming off of kind of the history that we had of the 2017 bond success, but then of course the school closures in 2019, knowing that we needed to approach this differently. But what we did was really rooted all of our decisions in not just how would this impact the communities that our district has quite frankly failed to serve in the past, but actually going and talking to those communities and understanding how are you experiencing our schools and what are the kind of hurt points and things that we need to address. So that was what really drove all of our decision making. And you'll see if you look at the major investments in this bond, over 80% of them are in what are considered our most socially vulnerable school communities, mostly predominantly in the Northeast Crescent of Austin. And I think another another really important piece is if any of our listeners are here, have been in any of our modernized schools from 2017, when we say, what does that mean for a building to reflect the cultural identities of students? Every one of those 17 schools that were built in 2017 was built in partnership with the community, with the staff, the families, community members. If you've been to Norman Sims, for example, you've got Black and African American leaders, murals on the walls with quotes that those kids get to walk and see every day. If you've been to the new East Side, we have murals on the walls that were, and all of the language and messaging crafted by the original L.C. Anderson alumni. So those students walk in and they know that they are in a building that has history, and they are being taught that history, and they have a sense of pride in where they come from.
Let me just cut in right there, because we all recognize that we have a governor who has made all kind of prohibitions and in laws and policies and stuff that would be excluding the students from learning about things of their culture. And then you mentioned that people will be able to walk into these facilities and be taught about their culture. You all can't abandon, as a school district, this particular law and policy. How can you really make that be a true? How can that be true to the students who are Black and brown?
So neither of us are curriculum specialists, but I do know that our district does very, of course, we're not breaking any laws in AISD, but we, of course, we can incorporate Texas history and local history into our curriculum. And I know that is something that we've looked at our calendar of events, for example, and like what holidays do we celebrate, and digging deeper into we just added Juneteenth became a national holiday, but Austin ISD had been celebrating that for quite some time. Right. So making sure that we're not just kind of picking and choosing the kind of traditional things that maybe we all grew up learning about and didn't learn. I did not learn about Juneteenth when I was growing up. That was just not, I wasn't from Texas either, but
yes.
So it's things like that. And I know that that's just kind of a small thing, but I know we also, we partner with UT, and I know they have different support for us to help us develop curriculum that is reflective of the local history of where our students come from in these communities.
Nice. In 2011, Austin ISD announced 9 schools that were proposed for closing. 5 of the 9 campuses were located east of I-35. This was also followed by 2019, when Austin ISD voted to close 4 elementary school campuses due to poor conditions and under-enrollment, where the majority of students impacted were kids of color and economically disadvantaged families. Mm-hmm. This has caused some distrust between the community and Austin ISD. Now that AISD is asking for the biggest bond the district would ever receive, what do families need to know to be reassured the schools in these communities will stay open?
I can speak on that. That's all right with
I see Allie looking at you, and I want you to start into this. We're going to have to go to a break in just about 1 minute. So in the studio with me is Allie and Gloria from the Austin Independent School District. We're going to be delving into talking about the bond. I'm going to come right back, and Gloria is going to dive into this question and give us some feedback on it. You're tuned into the Iron Sharpens Iron Show. I'm your host, Latrice Cook. 512-836-2887 is a call-in number if you want to join into this conversation with Miss Allie and Miss Gloria from the Austin Independent School District. We'll be right back to you. And we are back. You are tuned into the Iron Sharpens Iron Show, and I'm your host, Latrice Cook, in the studio this afternoon with some warriors from the Austin Independent School District, and we do have a caller on the phone. Caller, thank you for calling in. You're on the Iron Sharpens Iron Show. We lost him. Okay, caller, you can call back 512-836-2887. And so before we went to break, I was bringing up about the the issue of 2019. In 2011, Austin ISD announced 9 schools that were proposed for closing. This has caused some distrust between the community and Austin Independent School District. We have a caller. Caller, you're tuned in to the Iron Sharpens Iron show.
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, hello, and
Hello.
welcome to your guest. I just had a thought. I'm, born and raised here in East Austin, and went to, elementary school in East Austin, junior high school in East Austin, high school, college, and so on and so forth. And we had those institutions that were pivotal in the East Austin area where, we're successful by going to schools where people looked like me, the educators, the doctors. When she mentioned that the lack of schools in the northern part, I see that you did not mention in East Austin. Mm-hmm. My children still go and to these schools in East Austin, and they performed poorly. A lot of people didn't look like them. Once they transitioned to schools where there were more black and brown, I mean, even this year, someone said my grandchild was gifted, and he just did not take off in those schools. So I just want to get your thoughts about that.
Yes, thank you so much for your call. I like, Allie, you want to address that?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that comment. And when you ask me the question, can this bond address those things? This bond is not going to address the school-to-prison pipeline. Do we believe that it supports the deeper work that the district is trying to do around that? We do. But I think, some of the things that our district is doing, I know we've had a committee, for example, that's been, it's called the Committee on Eliminating Racial Disparities in Discipline and Punishment. And I think what you're describing about, I think it was your grandchild, you said, we know that that's the case, that we have teachers, we were just, we were learning about a statistic the other day, that some research that had been done where teachers keep their eye on black boys more than anyone else. So if a child is, snapping a rubber band like every kid does, but they're looking for something that child might be doing. So the reason that perhaps that your child wasn't identified as gifted and talented did they have an educator in front of them, like you say, that was looking for them to make a mistake, or were they looking for their gifts and talents? 100%. And we know that is a challenge that we have, and we are investing in cultural proficiency training for our staff, but we also know this isn't necessarily something you can just teach. Even if you invest in a year, it's not something that necessarily, it's changing hearts and minds, and it's really getting people to kind of see the world differently, right? So that is work that our district is invested in. And one thing that I feel very proud of just in the time that I've been in Austin ISD, you've probably heard of many committees AISD has had. And one criticism that we've had is you have a committee, they come up with a great plan, and then the plan sits on a shelf and no one looks at it. The thing that I am seeing from this administration is we have senior level leaders attending these meetings, collaborating with community members, listening to the experiences of parents like you, and co-developing solutions, whether that is in professional learning, whether it is in our staffing. What are the interview questions that we're asking when we're onboarding, right? So that we are getting a sense of the types of people we're bringing in the first place. So getting at the kind of root causes and not just trying to address the symptom of the problems.
512-836-2887. Gloria, I want you to jump in and answer this question, but I want to just kind of expound on what you just said. And, it's bothersome to me. I even see the associations. I just happened the other day to look at an association because had been an offer for me to go and have a headshot done at one of their conferences. And so in my look, I looked at another association that was over, I can't remember if it was principals or whatever it was, but the entire staff, everybody was white. Everybody. No, it was not a Hispanic. I mean, everybody in this association, in many school associations, have that same situation. If you have the professional affiliations, associations that teachers are to be affiliated with, and they are all non-diverse, how can you truly administer diversity in where our kids are going to school when everything that has any kind of administrative power or make ordinances or policies or whatever is all white without, forethought of minority children. How's that possible?
One of the things that the district is doing is working to pursue educators, people that are black and brown, and looking for ways to retain them. So, but tied to the bond, one of the things that we can say that we're doing is that when we fix our schools, instead of having to spend millions of dollars yearly patching them up, we can free up money to hire more educators. So we're looking at that hard. One of the things that Ali mentioned was when we were working with the bond steering committee to create the package, the $2.44 billion bond package, we looked at everywhere. We did root cause analysis. We looked at what caused the problem. We didn't just say, oh, let's fix this problem. You put a big fat Band-Aid over it, nobody can see anything. No, we went further. We went 5 steps back. And what caused this, but what caused that? And a lot of it goes back to racism. A lot of it goes back to systems that are not set up for the success of black and brown people, and we recognize that. But we were going to talk about the school closures, right? You said you wanted me to answer that question?
That's correct.
And so will you run that question by me again?
Yes. So it says, this was also followed by 2019 when Austin ISD voted to close 4 elementary school campuses due to poor conditions and under-enrollment, where the majority of students impacted were kids of color and economically disadvantaged families. This has caused some distrust between the community and Austin ISD. Now that AISD is asking for the biggest bond the district would have ever received, what do families need to know to be reassured the school in these communities will stay open?
I mean, back then they did the best with what they had, right? And so some of the decisions that were made were based on prioritizing facilities. Is that correct? So this time around, we have tools that we used to create a decision-making framework. So everything that went into this bond has to work towards building the 7 conditions for student success, and it also has to pass the smell test when it comes to the equity by design model. So we have a tool that was provided by our equity office that we have within Austin ISD. Dr. Hawley, I don't know if you've met Dr. Stephanie Hawley, she heads that department, and she helped us to look and make sure that the decisions that we make are not going to harm another group. And so all of this work that was put into this was always looking to improve the outcomes for our students by providing them the environment, the tools, the furniture Even like it's amazing how when I went to school, you sat your butt on a hard desk and that was it, right? You had this little thing here. Now we're treating children, we're setting them up for college. We're setting them up for, higher education instead of stifling them and making them sit still and making them, look. It's different. It's beautiful. You should check out some of our modernized schools. They're really.
That's very interesting because, of course, as you know, I am older than the Bible. And so, when I was going to school, those desks, I can relate to that, and it's amazing how kids are learning now and what it means to have a type of environment that is more user-friendly and free as opposed to something that is so, I'm not saying that we need to lose structure, but we need to lose the appearance of confinement.
Yes.
Which those desks, I just remember, you was certain size, it was very confining to even be in those desks for so many hours or whatnot. Let's talk a little bit about the bond itself. Want to just give you all an opportunity to talk about the importance of people getting out to support this bond and why this bond is so significant, especially to the minority community.
So this bond it's big. It's really big. It's broken up into 3 propositions. So when you go to vote, you'll see it in 3 different propositions.
General purpose.
Yes.
What does that mean?
General purpose is the fat cat. It's the one that covers the modernizations, like Ali mentioned, of the 25 schools. it's amazing to see the schools that are being modernized are historically underserved communities. I'm really excited about that part. Hell, I'm excited about all of it, but and it also covers. Do you want to expand on that?
Sure, yeah. So some of the schools that we're going to be modernizing will be fully modernizing Bertha Sadler Means Young Women's Leadership Academy. That school is under amazing leadership and has been growing, but we really think that by giving them a building they deserve, part of that building is currently condemned, so they can't even use that part of the building, so they're going to get a building built right for them. And kind of tying that in with the question that you asked about the school closures, that was something, as you can imagine, after the 2019 school closure process, when we started recruiting community members to be part of the process to build this bond, there naturally was a lot of mistrust in the community, and the folks who were drawn to the committee were folks who wanted to be there to make sure that didn't happen again. Quite frankly, I would say that was a very significant portion of the committee members. And so at every step, they were very intentional, and Sadler Means is a perfect example. That school currently is built for over 1,000 something students, and there's fewer than 400 at the school. We're building that school to a capacity of 600. It gives it space to grow, but we don't have to worry that it's this big inefficient building that is under-enrolled, because that's how many folks are in the community. And I just heard a trustee who lives in West Austin who told me that she heard her neighbor talking about Sadler Means. So the word is getting out. We do think that we can draw families from other parts of town into these schools as we invest in them. And I think that that's a big part of what this bond is about, is that making these investments in these schools, the message it sends to the students that they walk into those buildings about what it means when they have that beautiful building that looks like a college campus, what it means that we think about their futures and what they're capable of. Sorry.
No, keep going.
And as far as some of the other decisions that were made, they were really intentional about how do we invest in areas that we know have the potential to grow, but not like setting them up for potential failure by building them too big. But then other areas that we know that maybe there are certain parts of town, I've talked about this with Gloria back in 2019 when we were looking. Why does, for example, Trustee District 1, it had more than twice as many schools in it as the next largest district? And if you look back at our history, it is because back then, particularly east of 35, we built a school for the Black and African American students, for the Latino kids, and for the white kids.
Yeah.
And now we're finding that those are the most expensive parts of our city. Families are not able to stay. A lot of times they're leaving. We also see brand new, beautiful charter schools popping up. And our old schools that have not been invested in don't look so appealing, right? So by putting brand new, beautiful buildings, investing in those communities, we really do believe that we can our enrollment has been stabilizing, but we actually think that we can start kind of attracting families back in if we're sending the message that we are investing in those schools.
Good afternoon, caller. You are on the Iron Sharpens Iron show. Thank you for holding.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. Just have a quick question to the guest. Thank you for being here today. When questions are posed to you, such as the closure of the schools in East Austin or Northeast Austin or for the Black and brown students, the question was asked, what will be done? It just seems that you guys are going around the question. You're not answering the question directly. You're talking about furniture. You're talking about chairs. The question is, what are you going to do to prevent with this bond? How will we know once you're there, once you get this money, this bond, what's going to happen? Are you going to start building schools for East Austin, Northeast Austin? Or what's going to happen? Answer the question. That's what I like to hear.
Thank you so much for that. I'm gonna let them have it because I'm chuckling because you own it. Thank you, caller, for listening and your comment.
Gloria, I don't know if you have it right in front of you, the list, but yes, we are going to build 25 schools.
Read them all.
And so I can pull up that list.
They're trying to get the list for you.
But off the top of my head, I know Allison Elementary, Linder Elementary, which is one of the schools that received this students from Brooke. That was one of the closed schools, and that was a commitment the district made. Sadler Means, Pecan Springs. I know many of our high schools, Travis Early College High School is going to be fully modernized. Northeast is getting a partial modernization. Navarro is getting a partial modernization. Crockett is getting a partial modernization. So I can't think of every other school, but
There was, I did have a listing. These were the nine closed schools, and the 4 closed schools. What about Sims, Metz, Pease, and Brook? Those are
those are the ones that were closed, and the district is working on a repurposing process for.
Okay. And then what about Barton Hills, Zilker, Pease, Sanchez, Oak Springs, and Ortega?
So many of those schools are in West Austin, and they're not. I don't think a single school in West Austin is getting a full modernization.
I know for sure Ortega and Oak Springs, they're in East Austin.
Right, and they are not on the modernization list. So we did look at facility condition, but we also looked at kind of ages of the facilities, and then, as we mentioned, the schools that have the highest concentration of our historically underserved students. And so looking at those factors layered together, the condition of the facility and the students that they serve, was how we identified the 25.
One of the 512-836-2887 is the call-in number if you have questions or comments that you'd like to make. One of the things that you all are talking about is the modernization of the school buildings themselves. Some of the buildings that are in East Austin that have been here historically, are any of those immediate, let's just say in the immediate 12th Street area, and Gloria, you may know this a little bit better than Allie, just from knowing the lay of the land. Are there specific schools that are on this list that were closed schools that are being reopened and modernized, or no? Is that not what this bond is about at all?
No. This
Okay.
bond is to improve the schools that are being used at this time.
Okay.
So that we can help to retain our families. We can't retain our students and our families if we ask them to stay in buildings that are falling apart. We really can't. And so that is one of the things that we're committed to improving their spaces. And so what the caller said is right. You know, I don't mean to step around the question, and I'm glad that she, reminded me of what the question was. What we're doing is, so we had long range planning that started, a year ago? And long range planning helps us to make plans for the 7 generations. And what that means is that we're looking at policies and practices that have been harmful in the past so that we can change them. And that is one of the ways that we're working to retain our families and to attract more families to come to our schools. But those are not things that require bond money. Those are things that require change. And so that's one of the other things that we're looking at. And I was trying to pull up the list
got
of
it
the
right
schools.
here.
Oh, you did?
Because I was just getting ready to say, I'm
it won't
on
download.
Facebook. Carla Rivera just sent a whole list. So do you
That's great, Carla. Thank
shout out to
you.
Carla? Go ahead. You
Yeah,
wanna-
so Travis Early College High School, that's in just south of the river. Burnett Middle School's in northwest Austin, but in that Runberg area. Sadler Means, Allison Elementary, Andrews Elementary School, Barrington, and these are all in northeast Austin. Andrews, Barrington, Harris. Then you've got Houston and Langford and Linder, which are down southeast. Oak Springs, which is in the O2. Pecan Springs, which is pretty near here. Wooldridge and Wooten up in northeast in that Runberg area. Those are all the full modernizations. Then you've got your phased modernizations, which you'll find more often at the high schools just because they're such big projects. And every one of our high schools is getting a significant investment, if not a phased modernization, then some sort of investment in CTE or fine art spaces. But for the phased modernizations, you've got Anderson, Austin High, Crockett, LBJ, McCallum, Navarro, Northeast, Dobie, Martin, and then for middle schools, O. and then Hill Elementary School is going to get their completed modernization.
So there are 3 propositions on this on the bond for the bond on the ballot. Prop B is technology. You want to talk about that and what that actually means?
So at the start of the pandemic, there was emergency funds that were approved to purchase iPads and laptops and all that so that our students could go virtual. And you know how exciting and fun that was, right? When we were all learning from home, it was awful. I had Daniela at home going through first grade, and it was rough. But if we hadn't had those emergency funds, we would not be able to have, our students that didn't have devices at home. Anyway, we've learned from that, and so we've learned that we have to change with the times. We have to change with our students, and a lot of their learning is going to be done on technology, right? When laptops and all that. But beyond that, we're also looking to improve the stuff that nobody sees, the infrastructure when it comes to Wi-Fi and access. So that all goes into technology. What am I missing, Allie?
So
Am I
on the
missing?
technology side, when you're talking about those things, the laptops, the Wi-Fi, this, that, and the third, is that specifically going to be geared towards the schools that are receiving the improvement?
No,
Or
this is across
could
the
it just be anywhere?
It's every
It's
every
every-
child.
Okay.
Every
Okay.
child, every day is what we're talking about, right? But also staff, because our teachers also have to be able to keep up with our students. So what that means, these things break down, and our kids, they're rough. Kids are rough on the items that they use, whatever it is, their tablets or their laptops. And so those have to be replaced, and that's what the major part of that money is going to replace the things that are broken down or not returned to the school district.
And that is $75,541,000 in this bond package, which is quite hefty. Prop C is about stadiums and athletic complexes, $47,434,000. Tell me a little bit about that. Is that because when we were talking about initially that, this bond is about helping, the sickest of the sick schools, if we can just say that, to bring them more appealing. So we're gonna deal with the structure, the building. The technology aspect of it is not just going to go to those schools that are getting all the upgrades and the facelifts. That technology is spreading out to every student everywhere that's under AISD lit. What about the athletic part of this?
So yeah, sorry. The third proposition is to do some major improvements. It's Nelson Field, right? Is the one.
Field,
NOAC, also the Delco Activity Center. So Delco, it became such a huge help when we had Winter Storm Uri, when we used it for shelter. We used it also during the drives for the COVID testing, for the COVID vaccine. It's been used. It's a multi-purpose, and we put it to work. And so we found out that we need to improve that and be prepared in case we have another event like Winter Storm Uri or something like that come up. What I'm missing, I know it's no.
Carla Rivera says all schools, if the bond passes, would receive security upgrades, address critical deficiencies such as HVAC, plumbing, fencing, electricity, etc. Keeping these stadiums are multi-purpose facilities. They help with vaccination clinics. They are used as shelter, community events, graduations. They are spaces that our students use for athletics purposes as well. Y'all want to expound on that just a little bit? Thank you, Carla, for these for
and
this information. Who is Carla?
she's our colleague.
Okay, hey Carla.
Back.
512-836-2887. Keep going.
Yeah, much like the technology, one of the investments that we are doing, and this is not part of that Prop C, but we are investing in those turf fields at every one of our high schools. If you go to any of our high schools and talk to the coaches, they will tell you the state of those fields is not good. It's actually getting to a point where it's presenting safety hazards for our students. And so that is something that would be district-wide investment. We know that the communities at all of these high schools are using these fields. It's not just the students. But that Prop 3, it is a legal requirement that anytime that we want to invest in a space that is not attached to a school that's serves more than, it has 1,000 seats, I believe it is, it has to be on its independent proposition. So that what you see on there is the Nelson Field, the Delco, and the NOAC, but also part of that big general purpose one is also the investments in the fields at all of our high schools.
What should people know just about the ability to vote, specifically where they can vote? How does is there any specific difference in their ability to vote for the school district bonds, or is it on the general ballot?
It's all on the general ballot. One
Okay.
important thing to note, obviously, well, like you said, early voting is October 24th through November 4th. That actually is this coming Monday. The propositions will be toward the very end of your ballot. You're going to see all of your candidates, and then begin the propositions. We are the first of the propositions. I believe ACC and the city also have propositions on the ballot, but we will be Prop A, B, and C right after all the candidates. So make sure you complete your ballot.
Nearly 80% of all Texas inmates are high school dropouts. Austin ISD, while having an overall low dropout rate, 0.7%, has a 47.2% of at-risk students dropping out, the state average being 49.2%. Do you think the new renovations to the schools will help reduce the number of at-risk students? Allie?
I do think that there will be an indirect impact on the student experience, on the staff experience, and I do think that it has the potential to impact that. It is alone would not do that. I do not believe that, and I wouldn't tell anyone that I do. What we do know, we look at modernized facilities. We see higher teacher retention rates. We see higher attendance rates of both students and staff in modernized facilities when they have have natural light, things are working. Those are all things that we know have a high impact on students, right? There is a statistic that shows that if for every 10 days a student misses, they're like a certain percentage more likely to drop out of school, right? So making sure that we are doing everything that we can to invest in the spaces that our teachers are teaching in. Those retention rates, we know that we look at, a lot of times you'll have these schools that the district has not served as well in the past. We have higher teacher turnover, but we have talked to principals who are staffing these new schools, and they say, my colleagues that are in old buildings, they're still facing teacher shortages. I was able to get my school staffed before day one of school because people want to work in these buildings. And so these are all things that are indirectly impacting the greater and deeper work that we are trying to do that affects the actual teaching and learning.
And we also target the younger children. So we have to teach them a love for learning at the younger ages. If we don't catch them in elementary school, we're going to lose them, right? I know, all three of my kids were involved in school closures at the elementary level. Had they not had two parents that were involved and we had the privilege of having vehicles and providing them all the things, they might have ended up in the system, but I'm thankful that they didn't. But I know a lot of their classmates did, because poverty, because lack of access, because sometimes we're not culturally competent, we're not aware of what a child is going through. So those were things that I learned as a parent support specialist at Brooke Elementary, that we have to take care of the little ones, and they will grow. If we amplify and support our students, they'll have a love for learning. I really believe that. You and I have met with that other group because I was raging against the machine. You remember? Yes, ma'am.
We're going to have to run to a break real quick. And when we come back, we will continue and wrap up this conversation on the bond with Gloria and Allie, who are with us from the Austin Independent School District. Don't forget, early voting begins October 24th through November 4th for this very important, just election season period about everything. And when we come back on the Iron Sharpens Iron show, I'm going to get out of this seat and let one of my UT members get on the mic, introducing Emma, who will be conducting some of our Iron Sharpens Iron show. We'll be right back to you. 512-836-2887 if you want to join in the conversation. Keep it locked to the left. And we are back. You're tuned into the Iron Sharpens Iron Show. I'm your host, Latrice Cook, 512-836-2887. Shout out to Susanna, who is in Roundout School District number 72 in Lake Forest, Illinois. Thank you so much for being a supportive and consistent listener to the Iron Sharpens Iron Show, and all the other people who are listening. We want to thank you so much for that. While Emma is coming to the mic, Allie, you said that you wanted to give some information. Please do.
Love to. So Gloria had started a little bit talking just about how the question that you'd asked me before the break about the effects that I think the bond will have on that school to prison pipeline challenge that we have, and knowing that there are a lot of other things the district are doing. And I know this is something that's really important to Dr. Mays, our new superintendent, first black male superintendent in the district, that we're really excited about. Lovely, lovely man. But he has started a program called Mentors, MEN Tours. And that's really kind of what we were talking about, is he's really looking to recruit folks to mentor students in our schools, particularly men of color that our students can look up to. So if you are interested in being a mentor, that you're going to want to email Katrina Bailey at austinisd.org. It's katrina.bailey at austinisd.org, and she will get you all the information you need.
Can you give her information one more time?
Absolutely. It's Katrina Bailey, KATRINA BAILEY at austinisd.org.
Thank you for that. And now, as we're starting to wrap up, one more question for the both of y'all. So let's say that it's after the election and the bond is approved. What is the first thing that Austin ISD will plan to do with the money?
So one of the quickest things that we can do, as Carla was so gracious in getting us some of that information on the website, we are investing as one of the priorities is safety and security across the district. We know that with the tragedy in Uvalde, it is at top of mind for folks. The bond does fund secure vestibules at every one of our schools that doesn't have them, and what that does is it kind of creates a single point of entry that allows us to have greater control over who's entering the schools. So some of those safety and security upgrades, we're looking at fencing to make sure that there's a single point of entry in our schools, updating locks, doors, keys, things like that. So that's the kind of work that would be the quickest to get off the ground, would be those safety and security investments, obviously high priority and quick to get off the ground. As far as those big construction projects, we would be then working with community, talking with the school communities to try to figure out timelines. So typically we wish we could build 25 schools at once, but we can't. We're about 90% complete, a little over 90% complete of that 2017 bond, and we're about, as you know, 5 years out. So the most bonds, we kind of build them to have about a 5-year cycle. So you would see design starting, once we kind of figure out the timeline, you would see design starting as early as this spring, building up those design teams, the campus architectural teams, which we recruit families and staff and students to help work directly with the architects. They start designing, and then construction can usually start somewhere around 12 months after that, depending on if it's elementary, bigger the project, kind of longer and more drawn out that timeline is.
In those design, with the design teams and that AISD will be contracting with, we want to make sure that a part of that in consideration, as those people who have control over this in AISD are listening, we want to make sure that some of those contracts are given to people of color.
Absolutely.
A lot of the bond money, a lot of those things that are being constructed that are inclusive of people who own businesses and have a skill set to help erect those schools and do the renovations and so on and so forth. I think this is interesting as Emma's sitting in the seat as a high school graduate of Westlake?
St. Stephen's, a private school in Austin.
How do you feel just hearing what you're hearing and knowing that the school that you graduated from probably had everything and more than what was needed? How do you feel that has helped you by having all the tools that you needed in the type of school that you were in? How has that helped you, and how do you feel this would help those persons that they're asking this bond for?
That's a great question. I think that something that Ali said earlier about having these schools that are set up for the child's success in continuing their education, starting from elementary to middle to high school, and having those schools just looking forward to college for these students, and having modernized buildings that just really make them want to go to school and enjoy the space that they're in. I think that that is a very important aspect to one's education, because if you are physically comfortable in that space, you're more likely to attend and to learn and to just cultivate an environment to just enjoy your Monday through Fridays. And so I think that having these improvements in these schools, like y'all have been saying this time, is just the foundation of that learning experience.
Any closing remarks from Gloria and Ali as we wind down? Your closing thoughts, Gloria.
I really appreciate you having us on the show. I admire the work that you do. I think it's amazing. And anyone that's willing to put work into dismantling the school to prison pipeline, my God, that has my heart. I love our kids, yours, theirs, and mine. I love them all. And so I'm really excited to be working with Ali. This woman gives me a lot of room to do whatever work needs to be done and doesn't question a lot. So I'm in great company. I love that. And, she trusts me to do the right thing. And she knows that it comes from a place of love. And so, yeah, I appreciate it. And I appreciate you having us both on here.
Yeah, I echo everything Gloria is saying. I really am grateful to be on here. In particular with Gloria, it's pretty fitting. I don't think Gloria did mention in her bio, but she was not only the parent support specialist, but had a child at Brook Elementary, which was one of the schools we closed. And I was the face that she saw most days at those meetings and those conversations. And so I think, Gloria is not only a colleague of mine, but she is a friend. And in understanding the trust that AISD needs to build with the community. I think Gloria and I have a story of building trust, and I know that we are both really committed. I know that everyone that works in that central office in AISD really wants to show the community that we are changing patterns from the past that have caused the hurt and mistrust. It's not going to happen overnight, but we're really committed, and we're just really grateful that you gave us the opportunity to share the work that we're doing.
Yep. I love that. I appreciate it.
And once again, information on the bonds, just a quick overview for our listeners, and where can they find more information?
You can go to our website. You can go to AISD-Future.com, and you can find all the resources that we've used to educate the community, literally under the tab that says resources. But you can also reach out to us. I left my contact information with Latrice. You can reach out that way. You can email me. It's gloria.vera.bedolla. It's not long. Yeah, it is. At AustinISD.org, I'm sorry. But anyway, you can reach out. I'm on social media. I share everything about the work that we're doing. I think it's important to celebrate the things that we're doing so that people can understand that there are ways to build trust. I came back to work for the district because I had trust issues with the district. But I can tell you that I've been on this from the beginning of the work, and I trust it because I've been there the whole time. And I'm like, so what are we doing about this? What are we doing about that? And we have proof. We have every dollar is allocated. We have a whole bond summary table. So that buys in. I have buy-in, right, because of that. So anyway, yeah, I'd love to answer any questions. If you know of events that are happening, if you'll share them with us, we would really appreciate it, because we want to come out and continue to educate the community on this and remind folks that this is on the ballot and that it's really important for all of us to vote.
Absolutely. And if nothing that we said resonated with y'all today, I just want to leave with one last point that we tend to try to make about this bond, is that when these buildings, these old buildings, we have 116 school buildings in Austin. Many of them, the average age is 48, which means that many are even older than that, because we just built 17 brand new ones. Those buildings break down, cost a lot of money. We've got students and teachers trying to teach and learn without air conditioning. We got pipes breaking daily. all of those expenses coming out of our general fund directly competing with our ability to pay teachers. So you can't just build a school and think that it can go on functioning forever. Just like our homes, when things break and we don't want them to, that's what's happening to our schools. So this bond allows us to offload some of that burden off of our general fund. We know that paying teachers right now, teacher retention is a huge, huge issue after everything our teachers have been through with the pandemic. So this bond is going to free up some of that money, allow us to pay our teachers better. So we really think it's quite important.
Thank you both so much for coming to speak this hour.
Well, this has been a phenomenal show. I just want to close out by saying thank you, ladies, for giving us your time and your expertise and knowledge on this particular issue on this bond. And I want to say to Emma, who will be taking over the mic from time to time, thank you so much for your words and your insight as a former student and actually a student right now at the University of Texas at Austin. I'm blessed at Melge to have some of the brightest lights surrounding our work right now, and it's important. So I'm trying to give a little shout out to all of our listeners who continue to support us. And listen, I can't stress enough about early voting, because waiting until November 8th is typically a disaster for all of us. So I am a huge advocate to early vote if you can. Please, early voting starts next Monday and goes through November 4th. And election day, of course, is November 8th. And for those of you all who have previously been incarcerated and are no longer on paper, you are eligible to vote. You may not be able to vote in this particular election, but please do get registered to vote. And you can reach us at 512-473-2525, 512-473-2525 at Melge Center, and we are so happy to get you together. And as we wind down, because Slice is about to come on and give us the revamp, KZI, please support the radio station or support organizations that are doing work that you personally have a passion for. Thank you to our listening audience. And because you know your success is important to us, we'll be back with you next Wednesday.
I got to get in contact with the school.